I've already received some feedback regarding the fact that none of the audio that I was giving regarding the books on the shelf were heard by anyone. So I'm just going to do that part once again, and then I'll end the video. I had wanted to talk about some various books on my shelf that I thought would be helpful. There is this book by Norman Geisler, Origin Science. It's a very good book. You will get a lot of discussion similar to what I was talking about today in my presentation. Get it, or at least I'm going to put a whole bunch of books up here on for you to see. But consider getting some of them for your library at home. Leave them lying around for your children to be able to read sometime. If you don't do this, you're basically not giving them tools that they can have, that they can dip into and be able to take back to college and life. Christianity is built on a solid basis. It's not just philosophy and thoughts and theology. It is actually got a lot to base itself on. Let's see, I have another one here. The Encyclopedia of Bible Difficulties by Gleason Archer. This is a very good book. It talks about a lot of alleged contradictions in the Bible. People say that the Bible contradicts. Just give this book a gander and see if some of those difficulties don't resolve themselves. He's a very well-read man, and the book is worth looking at. I have another book here by a man by the name of Batzel Barrett Baxter. He talks about, notice the subtitle up there, A Study of the Evidence Supporting Christian Faith by Batzel Barrett Baxter. It's a very good book. It's well written. Mr. Baxter is long since dead, but this is a good book, and I've kept it or a copy of the book on my shelf, and intend to. I hope that it doesn't go out of print. It might be, but at least I've got a copy of it. Another one here is a book by William Lane Craig. He covers many philosophical ideas. He's probably one of the premier philosophers in the Christian world today, William Lane Craig, and you'll find him on YouTube debating a number of people, atheists. He debates others who claim to be Christians but who do not believe in the scriptures at all. He debates Islamic scholars as well. He talks in this book about why Christianity is reasonable. This word down there in the subtitle, Christian Truth and Apologetics. The word apologetics means defense of what you believe, made to others. Also, there's this book. It's called, notice the scratch out up at the top. There is a God, with the word no God scratched out. The author, Anthony Flew, as you can see there at the bottom, was the world's premier atheist back in the 1970s. I remember watching a debate between this man and a Christian professor, PhD, by the name of Thomas G. Warren, who received his PhD in in philosophy from Vanderbilt University. Anthony Flew was professor of philosophy at the University of Reading in England, and he was a premier warrior for the atheistic side. I remember listening to this debate when I was in high school and thinking, Mr. Flew, Dr. Flew is going to renounce his flat-out atheism. And at the very least, he's got to become at least a person that believes that there is a God, even if he doesn't come to fully believe in the God of the Bible. And by the dating of this book, I heard that debate back in the late 1970s. This book was written, let's see, let me turn to the title page. He had switched his views and had become a believer by 2007. Interestingly, when he did that, the atheistic world said, "Well, he never was really legitimate anyway um, as a person to stand up for the atheistic point of view." But that's not true. He was the premier representative until he came up against a premier representative of the Christian faith and found himself lacking. The debate, the Warren Flew debate, Warren, and Flew, Flew, is available online somewhere. I'll bet you can find it on YouTube. These books, The Case for Christian Theism, and also this book, Dear Agnos. An agnostic is a person who claims not to know anything for sure. But there had already been a book by that title, and Dr. Hoover just retitled the book. It's the same book. A.J. Hoover was one of my professors at Abilene Christian University. My master's degree in Bible there at Abilene Christian was an MA in Bible and related studies, and I focused in on this kind of stuff, biblical languages, and religious teaching of the Old and New Testaments. Those were my focuses, or foci, I guess you're supposed to say. And these books really helped. This was the textbook. The professor had the text. You have to read my book. Well, that wasn't the only text. We read many, many books by Christians and non-Christians alike, and challenge and lots of essays we read, and we wrote a lot of papers to discuss various aspects of what the Christian faith stands for and what are the arguments that it has to stand up for what it does. I have another one here entitled Putting Jesus in His Place by Robert Bowman and Ed Komazuski. This is a book on now this is an interesting book. It's an argument on the deity of Christ, and I have differing views than they do on this. I've written my own book, or helped to write a book of my own. You can find it on Amazon.com, and it is entitled The Son of God, 3 Views of the Identity of Jesus. I debate a couple of guys like these authors and a couple of other guys who have other views, and we basically debate each other. But the concept of this is trying to make sure that you have a pretty accurate understanding of who Jesus is and what he claims. And it's important to know that in understanding your Christianity. I probably will just leave that alone since it's a slightly different topic than what we're talking about, but I'll talk about this topic probably in another setting, maybe in a dialogue with somebody who holds the opposite view of myself, but I'll get to that on another occasion. But it's on my section on things that are foundational for belief. Another book here by John MacArthur, Nothing But the Truth. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. John MacArthur is a preeminent Christian author. Actually, a direct relative of Douglas MacArthur and the hero of World War II. Anyway, he writes a very quick book on the reasonability of Christianity and such matters. It's a good book to have on your shelf. You notice it's very thin. It doesn't cover a lot of time. It wouldn't take a lot of time to read it, I guess I'm trying to say. Also, I have here a rather fascinating book by PhD scientist. He's Christian, by the name of Stephen C. Meyer. And this book covers the concept of how the human cell and the RNA and DNA inside of it demonstrate the existence of a designer of the human body. And this book is the preeminent book on DNA and the evidence for intelligent design. He doesn't try to argue in this book that a person should believe in the Bible or anything like that, but he does argue that it is scientific to see that some entity with intelligence created this universe, and on the micro level, the human cell could not function as it does by accident. It's an amazing book. You can see it's pretty thick. But if a person's serious, he will take up and read a book like this. I also have another book a little bit shorter. I have another book a little bit shorter by a man named J.P. Moreland, Scaling the Secular City. It covers various things. Probably one of its best discussions is a discussion on how you know the difference between that there can be right, not the difference between. The book that discusses how you can know that a thing is right and know that a thing is wrong. And as I was discussing at the beginning of the earlier video presentation, a lot of people believe that because people are generally good at heart, they know how to determine what is right and wrong. Absolutely. The fact of the matter is, however, that if people are left to decide what is right and wrong, they end up doing things like the gas chambers in Auschwitz and the gulags in Russia, and totalitarian government that punishes anybody that has a difference of opinion on anything, particularly political. Right and wrong are morally objective. If they are not, then anything can be right or wrong. He also has discussion in this book on evidence for the literal bodily resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth from the grave. There's another book on that, I think here. It's not up here. I thought I had it here, but I don't. But at any rate, this book is a good one to have. These books are really cheap on Amazon.com. You can get them used at nominal cost. One more here is The Christian View of Science and the Scripture by Bernard Ramm. The interesting thing about Dr. Ramm is he has a PhD in theology, and he has a PhD in science as well. So he writes from a very learned perspective on either side of the issue, from a Christian point of view and from a scientific point of view. He has earned degrees from both of those places. This is a very good book to have. I see Betty Pro-Size McAllister up there that just joined a few minutes ago, and I will be by to talk to Mary Lou about books that Joe had that will get to be added to my meager library. But I haven't come by yet. Hello, Aaron Owens. I see that you're there. Angel Ruiz from school. Good to see you as well. Ram also wrote another book, entitled Protestant Biblical Interpretation. It's a book on how to accurately read the Bible. People pick it up and say, I just can't understand any of this. This is just way above my head. Well, the Bible doesn't have to be above your head if you're serious enough in finding out how to read it. And this book will help you do that. It's a wonderful book to have. Let's see. This is a dangerous book, but I'm going to tell you about it anyway, particularly if you send your children to Texas Christian University. Yes, I think that's right. Texas Christian University. This book was required reading there when I was a college minister there back in 2001. And it was also required reading at Virginia Tech when I was a college minister at Virginia Tech. This book, written by Bertrand Russell, he was one of the great atheists and skeptics, and I've seen Christians completely lose their faith by reading this book and not thinking it through. I'm telling you, this book is a good book, and it will help you to see exactly what is out there as an attack against Christianity. You have to know the enemy to be able to fight. And I'm not saying that this is that you just throw a book away just because it's written by a person that's not a believer. I have serious problems with him, and I wouldn't have a problem debating him online if he were alive today, which he is not. But anyway, there are a lot of people that have addressed some of his issues of skepticism and doubt, and so much for that. I have two more books here, and that's all that I'll spend time talking about. One of my professors at Abilene Christian University, Dr. J.D. Thomas, received his PhD, I believe it was in New Testament writings or in biblical writings or biblical manuscripts or something like that. Anyway, he received his credentials, legitimately earned, from the University of Chicago. He wrote first the book on the bottom, Facts and Faith, and then the book at the top deals a little bit more with philosophy. The bottom book talks about some of the specific things that I mentioned earlier. These are two good books. I have them well marked up on the inside. People that I've trusted come to believe as having a lot of legitimate stuff to say about the truth of Christianity and why we do not need to be embarrassed or ashamed or feel at any level of loss in being able to stand up for what we believe in as Christians. So, having said all of that, I do think I want to restate something I said earlier. Your kids, and those of you that are kids that I know, you're going to be going off, and your kids are going to be going off to colleges and universities, and they're going to be challenged with regard to their faith. They need to take something with them when they go. At least one book that they can have on their shelf that they can use to offset the types of challenges that they're going to receive. And the book that I'm thinking about the most, that puts in one place, is a book by Josh McDowell entitled "The New Evidence That Demands a Verdict." There are flaws to this book, but if I were going to think of one book that a person could use that would directly impact what your kids will be told in school, in college, "The New Evidence That Demands a Verdict" by Josh McDowell is the way to go. You or your church will probably hand out copies of a Bible, probably the King James, which is a mistake because they won't read it, but you are going to usually give your graduating seniors going away gifts as a church. Give them a copy of Evidence That Demands a Verdict so they can keep it on their shelf and maintain their faith when it is guaranteed to be challenged by skeptics. Just please do it. You did not train them in their Christianity while they were at home. You know you didn't. I know you didn't. You were good people, morally and generally, and you said nothing to them about why the Bible is true, what the evidence is that Jesus of Nazareth literally rose from the dead. You told them nothing about how to prove that the Bible documents are realistically accurate and should be accepted as legitimate documents to follow and to read for their own Christian walk. You didn't train them in that way, because that's not what is done in youth ministries and churches today. In youth ministries and churches today, you provide a nice social environment for kids to stay out of trouble, but you don't train them in how to maintain their faith when challenged by skeptics, atheists, and philosophers. We did do that over at the Church of Christ, where I was raised here in Fort Stockton, but that's not generally done. It needs to be done, pastors, teachers out there in the Fort Stockton churches and anywhere else that's listening to me. Get off of your hump and help your kids to be able to stand against the challenges that they're really going to be facing once they get into college. Please put it into the doggone church curriculum. All seniors will study Christian evidences before they leave our church. Do it, and they won't come back home like many students have come back here to Fort Stockton and told me that they are no longer Christians. They no longer believe any of these things anymore, but they will go to church with their parents because they don't want them to know that they have lost their faith. And I ask them why they lost their faith, and they come back to me with, well, the Bible isn't really reliable. It's not really got a set of reliable manuscripts that backed it up. I don't believe in the Bible anymore. I don't believe Jesus literally rose from the dead, so why should I believe any of it? And of course, the Apostle Paul himself also said in 1 Corinthians chapter 15 that if Jesus did not literally rise from the dead, we should eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. There's no point to Christian living other than you just want to be nice for any concept of an eternity if Jesus is somewhere rotting away in a grave somewhere in a tomb, or was eaten by dogs, or any number of things that different skeptics have to say about the death of Christ. If he didn't rise from the dead, then Christianity is false. If your children don't know how to hold on to that view with something other than just a subjective feeling on the inside, oh, I believe that Jesus rose from the dead because I was around a bunch of people that also believe that. You heard it on Christmas Day. Jesus is risen. And then the response is, yes, indeed he is, or something like that. You know, it's a nice little liturgical, oh yeah, Jesus is risen. He is risen indeed. It's a nice liturgical little thing, but I guarantee you there are kids sitting out there in the audience that are going, really? Really? Can you prove that to me? But they'll never say it because they know that if they say it, they're going to be in trouble. And they don't want to deal with their parents. Why do I know this? Because kids talk to me. They talk to me and they tell me what they believe. And they tell me what they don't believe, and I don't know why they talk to me, but they do. And I'm just telling you that you need to help them so that they can know why they believe. I did not intend for this to go and be a big, long, additional discussion. So I'll stop right here. But I hope that some of those books were useful, will prove useful to you in your training of yourself and of your kids in times future. I'll see you again down the road.